The moment Claire whispered, "My husband never does this," the air changed, even though the room stayed quiet and warm. It was a normal Sunday afternoon in a quiet New England town, the kind of day people forget by Monday. But for Daniel, those 6 words hit like a sudden turn on an empty road. He hadn't expected them. He hadn't asked for them. And yet once spoken, they couldn't be pulled back. The house smelled like fresh coffee and rain-soaked air drifting in through a cracked window. Outside, the sky was gray, steady, calm. Inside, something fragile had just been named. Claire Harper sat on the edge of the couch, one hand wrapped around her mug as if it might slip away. She was 42, thoughtful, composed, the kind of woman neighbors trusted with spare keys and quiet advice. Married for over a decade. A mother, responsible, careful. Not someone who made careless confessions. Daniel Reed stood a few feet away, suddenly unsure of where to place his hands. He had only meant to help, nothing more than adjusting the sleeve of her sweater when it slipped. A small gesture done without thinking. A habit maybe from a time when kindness had been freely given and easily returned. He hadn't known it would matter. "I didn't mean to say that," Claire added quickly, her voice steady but low. "It just came out." Daniel nodded once. He chose his words the way someone steps onto thin ice. "I didn't take it the wrong way." But they both knew something had shifted. They had met weeks earlier at a local fundraiser in Hartford, one of those events filled with polite smiles and name tags. Daniel had gone because he promised himself he would stop saying no to invitations after his divorce. Claire had gone because it was expected of her. They ended up at the same table, talking longer than planned, laughing quietly while others drifted away. There had been nothing dramatic about it. Just comfort, ease, the kind that sneaks up on people who didn't know they were missing it. Now, standing in her living room, Daniel felt that same ease wrapped in tension. He looked at Claire, really looked at her, and saw tiredness she tried hard to hide. Not exhaustion from work or parenting, but something deeper. The tiredness of being unseen. Her husband, Mark, was away on a business trip. Claire had mentioned it casually, the way she mentioned grocery lists or school schedules. Daniel hadn't thought much of it then. He was thinking about it now. "You don't owe me an explanation," Daniel said gently. Claire smiled, but the smile didn't settle. "I know. She stopped. Took a breath. Sometimes you don't realize what's missing until it shows up quietly." The words hung between them. Daniel stepped back, giving her space. He didn't want to be the reason for regret later. "I should probably head out soon." She nodded, though her shoulders dropped just slightly. "Of course." They talked after that about safe things. A new cafe opening downtown. The weather. Her kids' busy schedules. The conversation moved fast, light on the surface. But underneath it ran something steady and unspoken. Awareness. Daniel noticed how carefully Claire chose her words. How often she paused before speaking, as if checking herself. Claire noticed how Daniel listened without rushing, without looking at his phone, without waiting for his turn to talk. It made the room feel smaller, warmer. When Daniel finally picked up his jacket, the rain outside had slowed to a soft drizzle. Claire walked him to the door, stopping just short of where the hallway narrowed. The light above cast a soft glow, catching the silver in her hair she didn't bother to hide. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for having me," Daniel replied. There was a moment, then brief, fragile, where either of them could have said something more. Neither did. Daniel opened the door. Cool air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet pavement. He turned once more. "You deserve to feel noticed," he said simply. Claire swallowed. "So do you?" The door closed quietly behind him. Claire stood there longer than she meant to, listening to his footsteps fade. Feeling her heart beat faster than it had in years. Nothing improper had happened. No lines crossed. And yet she felt shaken, as if she had looked into a mirror she had avoided for a long time. She returned to the living room and sat down, staring at the spot where Daniel had stood. The house felt larger now. Too quiet. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mark about a delayed flight. She replied with a simple, "Okay." That night, as darkness settled and the rain returned, Claire moved through her routine on autopilot. Dishes, emails, setting out clothes for the morning. But her mind replayed the afternoon again and again. Not the gesture itself, but the feeling it stirred. Being seen. Daniel, meanwhile, drove home with the radio off. He told himself he had done the right thing by leaving early, by keeping his distance. He reminded himself that Claire was married, that her life was not his to disturb. Still, he couldn't shake the weight of her words. My husband never does this. He knew that sentence wasn't about him. It was about absence. About years of small things fading quietly away. Daniel pulled into his driveway and sat in the car for a moment before going inside. His house was modest, quiet, still carrying traces of a life that had ended too cleanly. His divorce had been mutual, polite, almost gentle. No shouting. No betrayal. Just distance that grew until it felt permanent. He wondered if distance always arrived quietly. Back in Claire's house, the clock ticked past midnight. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the empty space beside her. She loved Mark. She had always loved him. But love, she was realizing, could exist alongside longing. She thought of the way Daniel's voice had softened when he spoke to her. The way he hadn't tried to fix anything or ask for more. Just presence, just care. Claire turned onto her side and closed her eyes, hoping sleep would come. Instead, clarity did. Something had shifted, and pretending otherwise felt impossible. Not because she wanted something to happen, but because she could no longer ignore what hadn't been happening for a long time. And somewhere between regret and hope, between loyalty and truth, Claire understood that this was only the beginning of a quiet, complicated reckoning, one that would ask her to face the life she had accepted and the life she still wanted. The rain tapped steadily against the window, as if counting down to a conversation that could no longer be delayed. Claire woke before sunrise, her heart already heavy, as if the night had whispered truths she could no longer ignore. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the space beside her in bed felt larger than it should have. She stared at the ceiling and knew one thing for sure. Life could not go back to how it was before that afternoon. She moved through the morning quickly. Coffee brewed. Lunches were packed. The kids' voices filled the kitchen for a short while, then disappeared as the door closed behind them. When the house fell silent again, Claire stood at the sink, gripping the edge, trying to steady herself. Nothing had happened, yet everything felt different. At work, time moved fast and slow at the same time. Emails stacked up. Meetings came and went. Claire smiled when needed, spoke when expected, but her thoughts drifted. Her phone buzzed on the desk and her breath caught before she even looked. It was Daniel. "Hope your day's going okay." The message was simple. Respectful, safe, still. Her fingers hovered over the screen longer than they should have. "Busy, but fine," she replied. "Hope yours is good too." That was all. No hidden meaning. No crossing lines. Yet the exchange stayed with her for the rest of the day. Like a quiet reminder that someone out there noticed her existence beyond roles and routines. That evening, Mark called from his hotel room. His voice sounded tired. He talked about delays, deadlines, and how ready he was to come home. Claire listened carefully, noticing how easily the conversation stayed on the surface. When the call ended, she set her phone down and sat still for a long moment. She realized then that the distance between them hadn't appeared overnight. It had grown slowly, unnoticed, protected by habit. Days passed, then weeks. Life continued at its usual speed. School drop-offs, work stress, weekend errands. Claire and Daniel exchanged brief messages now and then, always polite, never emotional. Yet even in their careful words, there was honesty. They never pretended to be more than they were. One evening, Claire and Mark attended a community charity event in downtown Hartford. The room buzzed with conversation and soft music. Claire wore a simple blue dress, nothing special. But she felt strangely nervous. That's when she saw Daniel. He stood near the back of the room, talking with a small group, his posture relaxed. When his eyes met hers, there was no shock, only recognition. They smiled politely, like people who shared a quiet understanding no one else could see. Mark excused himself to take a call, leaving Claire alone with Daniel for a moment. "Good to see you," Daniel said. "You too," Claire replied. They spoke about the event, about work, about nothing important. Yet beneath every word was something unspoken. Claire felt it pressing against her chest. "I've been thinking about what you said," she admitted softly. Daniel met her gaze, calm and steady. "And what did you learn?" "That wanting care doesn't make me ungrateful," she said. "It just makes me human." Daniel nodded. "That's true." Mark returned before anything more could be said. The moment passed, but the truth remained. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house grew quiet, Claire sat across from Mark at the kitchen table. The clock ticked loudly in the background. She took a breath and spoke. She didn't accuse. She didn't blame. She talked about feeling distant, about missing connection, about how routine had replaced closeness. Mark listened, surprised but attentive. For once, he didn't interrupt. He didn't defend himself. He stayed present. The conversation wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But it was honest. Over the next few weeks, small changes began. They ate dinner without phones. They talked after the kids went to bed. Mark made an effort to notice things again, how Claire's day went. How tired she looked, how much she carried without asking for help. It wasn't perfect. Some days felt awkward. Some conversations ended in silence. But the distance no longer went unnamed. During this time, Daniel stepped back. Not because he didn't care, but because he respected the line Claire was choosing to face. Their messages became fewer, then stopped. There was no dramatic goodbye, just understanding. Months later, on a crisp fall afternoon, Claire ran into Daniel at a small cafe near the river. Leaves covered the sidewalk, bright and restless. They stood across from each other, two people changed by quiet choices. "How are you?" Daniel asked. "Better," Claire said honestly. "Not because everything is fixed, but because it's real." Daniel smiled. "I'm glad." She hesitated, then added, "I wanted you to know. What you did mattered. You didn't try to take anything. You just showed me what I had stopped asking for." "That was always enough," Daniel replied. They said goodbye without regret. Claire walked home feeling lighter, her steps steady. She knew her marriage would still require effort. Nothing was guaranteed. But she had found her voice again, and that changed everything. That night, as she sat beside Mark on the couch, the house warm and calm, Claire felt something return that she thought was gone for good. Not excitement, not perfection, but connection. And it all began with a whisper that forced her to listen to her own heart at last.